I want to say inspirational. I would say life-changing.
I feel blessed.
When associating athletics and their importance in history, names such as Jackie Robinson or Billie Jean King often come to mind. This is the story of the forgotten legacy of basketball's winningest team, the Wayland Baptist Flying Queens. In 1948, a group of young women came together with the help of Wayland Baptist University, a small Southern Baptist college located in the panhandle of Texas, and began their very own basketball team. Though facing many obstacles, these fierce women stayed determined, eventually breaking down every single boundary they encountered. They were the embodiment of the women's rights movement, making an impact on women's sports long before Title IX, and proving to every single one of their adversaries that they were not just girls dribbling a ball, but they were flying queens that would eventually have 1,600 victories, give full women's basketball scholarships, and pave the way for all women athletes.
Well, I went there as a freshman, and of course I had been playing basketball in high school, and I just thought that was the thing to do for actually a PE course, just take them. And when I started it out, I had no idea that it was going to turn into a big deal for us, but it did.
Eventually known for their entertaining pregame warm-up to the Harlem Globetrotters version of Sweet Georgia Brown, women's basketball at Wayland can be rooted all the way back to the founding of the institution itself in 1910. The Queens, known as Wayland Lassies, were a club that competed against anyone they could find, normally local high schools, and provided their own transportation. The women's basketball program at Wayland followed a similar pattern until 1947 when J.W. Marshall, president of Wayland Baptist University, decided to start a basketball program for the women. To accommodate these girls who often came from low-income panhandle families, Wayland became the first four-year collegiate program in history to provide full scholarships for women's basketball. In 1948, the team donned uniforms furnished by the Harvest Queens Mill of Plainview, the first business to help finance the team. Thus, they adopted the name of Harvest Queens. Then, beginning in 1951, Claude and Wilda Hutcherson, the couple who owned Hutcherson Air Service, sponsored the team for the following decades, often acting as role models for the Queens. They paid for all of the Queens' commodities and flew them to all of their out-of-town games, making them the first team to fly to all of its games. In its prime, the team was coached by Harley Redden, a West Texas native who played basketball all of his life. Harley Redden was a Marine Corps veteran who had flown over 50 bomber missions during World War II. Redden helped create the 131 win streak, an impressive feat that remains unbeaten by any male or female collegiate team today.
Harley Redden is an exceptional man and always was a shining example for us. A good coach, he knew basketball, he taught us, he cared for us as individuals, didn't ignore any of us.
I think, the main thing with Harley was he wanted good people, not only great players, and that made him special. He's just a coach that everybody wanted to play for.
Redden continued to coach the team for another 15 years until 1973, accumulating 6 AAU championships, 5 straight NWIT championships, and held a win-loss record of 431-66. With Redden as coach, the Queens contributed significantly to the development of women's basketball. They led the United States to victories in the Pan American Games and the Olympics. The team was also the driving force behind the adoption of several progressive rule changes in women's basketball, including the continuous unlimited dribble, the 30-second clock, and the 5-player full-court game. By 1956, the Queens began to gain national attention. It was common to be reported on by male sports writers who knew nothing about women's sports and were very condescending. But in Texas and other states, female high school basketball players who wanted to go to college were inspired by the articles they read. Girls came from all over the country.
I grew up in a small town, and even back then you didn't see a lot of girls go off to college. They, married or they got jobs, but I got a chance through a scholarship to go to Wayland. I had a wonderful time. It was an experience that a small town girl just can't imagine having.
The Queens were also part of the State Department's intercultural exchange program that intended to improve relations between the United States and the Soviet Union.
I had just lifted the Iron Curtain and was allowing travel between the countries. We were watched, and we knew we were watched, but they took good care of us and were very good to us. And I always think about this. We played in this big Coliseum in Moscow, and the Russian people were very receptive. Whenever the U.S. team would make a good play, they would clap for us. And you know, it was just a real interesting experience.
Despite their consistent and seemingly impossible success, not everyone was supportive of the Queens. Rumors surrounding the Queens also attempted to taint their names by creating stories about them, smoking or drinking excessively. Some of Wayland's minstrel students believed the women players were more tempted to commit sin because they were short. The Queens encountered more turbulence in 1960 when Wayland Baptist president at the time, A. Hope Owens, attempted to disband the women's program. His board found that the college was spending too much money on scholarships and ignoring academic programs. Thus, Owens concluded some scholarships had to be cut, but refused to remove those granted to minstrel students, high academic achievers, or male athletes. After enacting this, Claude Hutcherson, with other Plain U businesses, funded the Queen's scholarships for the next year, leading to the reversal of the decision. Nonetheless, the damage had been done. In 1972, President Richard Nixon signed into law the Higher Education Amendments, passing Title IX and allowing women programs nationwide to be funded, removing any economic challenges teams may have faced. As time passed, it became clear that the Queens would no longer be able to compete against larger schools, which had bigger budgets and national recruiting programs. When the Queen's empire finally fell in the late 1980s, almost every single major Texas university had a women's athletic program, many modeled after the Queen's. History books had left the Queens behind, but they continued to break records. In the 1980s, the Queens posted their 1,000th victory, and later in 2017, the Queens won 1,600 games. Entering the 21st century, the Queens still face boundaries past those of Title IX's increased competitiveness and everlasting gender inequalities. Despite their game-changing entrance onto the court, the Queens struggled to gain recognition for their revolutionary efforts by large basketball organizations, mostly due to Wayland Baptist's smaller size. Finally, in 2019, after being nominated several times past and a large effort by the Hutcherson Queens Foundation, the Queens were recognized by the Naismith's Basketball Hall of Fame for the instrumental changes made to the game of women's basketball from 1948 to 1982. Today, the Queens continue their journey of excellence, boasting an impressive resume. They hold 10 AAU championships with 212 All-American awards from varying organizations. From its community sponsors like the Harvest Queen Mill and Hutcherson Air Service in its early years, to offering athletic scholarships for women and changing the game to full court, 5-on-5 with unlimited dribble, the Queens were at the forefront of women's basketball, breaking every single barrier they encountered: sexism, funding, popularity, rejection. The Flying Queens were truly the winningest team in every sense of the phrase. As the team blossomed, so did the generations of young women nationwide. By the time Title IX was passed, little girls who had grown with the name Flying Queens had become women. Women who had seen no matter their gender, success was possible, and went on to push women's sports to where they are today. With the help of Wayland Baptist University, a small Baptist college in Plainview, Texas, the Flying Queens created an unbreakable legacy long before it was ever considered possible.